The moment they read my execution sentence, my own father doesn't even look at me. That's the part that breaks something in my chest. Not the chains, not the crowd spitting at my boots. My father, staring straight ahead like I'm already a ghost, while the man who framed me stands 2 steps behind his throne, smiling. My name is Alaric Renn, second son of the Grand Duke of Esterlin, 22 years old, and in about 10 minutes, I'm going to be marched through the Cinder Gate into a wasteland where nobody has survived longer than a week in 300 years. They're not calling it execution, they're calling it mercy. Funny word for it. 3 days ago, I was the man who signed the Cinder Gate Treaty beside my father, sealing peace between 4 warring border houses. 2 hours after the ink dried, half the delegation was dead, poisoned wine, my seal on the goblet tray, my signature on the requisition order for the vintage. I never touched that wine. I didn't order it. But paper doesn't argue back, and my older brother Ivor made sure the paper told a very convincing lie. The guards drag me past the noble stands. I catch Ivor's eyes for half a second. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't need to. He just watches me go with the calm, patient look of a man who has already won. I should have seen it coming. Ivor has hated me since we were children. Ever since our father started saying my instincts were sharper than his. Funny how a compliment can become a death sentence if you wait long enough. The Cinder Gate looms ahead, a black iron arch scorched by some fire centuries old. Beyond it, the hollow reach, a wasteland so cursed that the ground itself is said to remember dying. Ash-gray dust for 100 miles, no birds, no rivers that don't run black. Any last words for your father? The captain asks, almost bored. I look back one more time. My father finally meets my eyes. And what I see there isn't hatred. It's relief. Relief that the problem is about to walk itself into a grave nobody has to dig. That's when I stop feeling sorry for myself. They shove me through the gate. The iron groans shut behind me, like a jaw closing. And I'm alone. In the one place on the continent where even the Ivory Synod's most devoted zealots refuse to set foot, because they say the land itself is a corpse that never finished dying. I take one step onto the ash, and the ground breathes. I feel it under my boot. A low pulse, like a heartbeat buried miles deep. I freeze. Every survival instinct screams at me to run back to the gate, except there is no back. The gate is already sealed, and somewhere behind it, my brother is probably already celebrating, so I do the only thing left. I walk forward, into the dead land, waiting to die like everyone told me I would. I don't die, not that first hour anyway, but I do find out exactly why nobody who enters the hollow reach ever comes back. The whispers start an hour past the gate, not wind, not my own head playing tricks. Actual whispers, layered on top of each other. Dozens of voices, speaking a language that sounds older than any I've ever heard at court. I stop walking. The whispers stop too, like something noticed me noticing. That's when the ground beneath my boots cracks open in a perfect circle, and a hand made of black stone reaches up through the ash. I stumble back, heart slamming. The hand doesn't grab for me. It just hovers there, fingers the size of my forearm, trembling like it hasn't moved in centuries and forgot how. Then a voice, low and cracked, rises out of the crater. Blood of the broken house, it says. You should not exist. I should mention here that I have never, not once in my life, heard a rock talk. So my first response is extremely intelligent. I say nothing and nearly fall over, backing away from it. The stone hand curls into a fist, then presses flat against the ash. And slowly, impossibly, a shape begins rising out of the crater behind it. Not a man. Something built like a man, if a man were carved from wasteland bedrock and stitched together with old iron chains. I am what remains of the third Warden, it rasps. Bound here since the Sundering broke this land. I felt your blood the moment it touched the ash. Renn blood. I did not think that line still lived. You know my family name? I manage. I know the family that betrayed this land 400 years ago, it says, and left the rest of us here to rot for it. That single sentence rearranges everything I thought I knew about why I was banished here. This isn't just a wasteland. It's a grave my ancestors dug, and apparently, they never finished paying for it. Here's the part they never taught me in any of my tutoring sessions on Esterlin history. 400 years ago, this land wasn't a wasteland. It was the heart of an empire so powerful the old maps just called it the Verdant Crown. And the Renn family helped tear it apart. The Warden doesn't tell me everything, just enough. A pact broken. A godline of land spirits called Wardens, bound to protect the empire, betrayed by the very bloodlines sworn to serve them. The empire collapsed into the cursed ash I'm standing on now. Why didn't it kill me the second I walked through the gate, I ask? If my blood is the enemy's blood? The Warden's stone head tilts, studying me like I'm a puzzle it hadn't expected to see solved in its lifetime. Because you did not run from us, it says. You listened. That has not happened in 4 centuries. That's when it tells me the part that actually terrifies me. I'm not the first Renn banished into the Hollow Reach. I'm the 7th in 400 years. Every single one before me died screaming within a day. What makes you think I'll last any longer? I ask, voice tighter than I want it to be. The Warden doesn't answer right away. It just extends that massive stone hand toward me, palm up, waiting. Because the others came here as prisoners, it finally says. You came here already broken by the people who were supposed to protect you. That is the first condition of the Sundering Pact. A bond forged only through someone abandoned by their own blood. I stare at that outstretched hand for a long moment. Every instinct tells me this is exactly the kind of decision that gets a person killed in every cautionary story I've ever heard. And then I think about my father's face. The relief in his eyes. I put my hand in the Warden's palm. The pain hits before I even register what's happening. It floods up my arm like fire poured straight into my veins, and for one horrifying second I think this is it. This is how I die, tricked by a talking rock into some ancient ritual sacrifice. Then the pain becomes something else. Information. Centuries of it, slamming into my skull all at once. Maps of a buried empire. The names of wardens I haven't met yet. Rules of a pact system older than every kingdom currently drawing breath on this continent. I collapse to my knees, gasping, ash coating my palms. The Warden withdraws its hand, and where our skin touched, a mark now glows faintly on the back of mine. Not a brand, a sigil, intricate and alive, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. What did you just do to me? I ask between breaths. I gave you what your ancestors stole, the Warden says. The right to hear us, the right to bind us. You are the first Sundering Bearer to walk this land in 400 years, Alaric Renn. A Sundering Bearer. I don't even know what that means yet, and it already sounds like exactly the kind of title that gets a person killed twice as fast. The Warden explains fast, because apparently even ancient stone guardians understand that a dying man needs the short version. The Sundering Pact lets me hear dormant wardens buried across the wasteland and bind them, one by one, if I can prove myself worthy of trust each time. Every warden I bind grants me something. Shelter, water, materials pulled from ash that shouldn't exist anymore. The land itself will slowly wake up around every pact I forge, healing in small radiuses I control. There's a catch, I say, because there's always a catch. The catch, the Warden agrees, is that every warden bound will draw attention. This land is watched more closely than you understand. The Ivory Synod burns anything they suspect might one day threaten their grip on the border kingdoms. Great. So the moment I actually manage not to die out here, an army of zealots is going to show up specifically to make sure I die out here anyway. One more thing, the Warden adds, almost as an afterthought, in a tone that makes my stomach drop before it even finishes the sentence. You are not the only bloodline the Sundering responds to. If word reaches your brother that you survived, and that this land answers to you, he will not sit on his throne quietly. I laugh, short and humorless, dust cracking on my split lip. Ivor thinks I'm already dead. He's not going to waste a single thought on a wasteland ghost. The Warden's stone jaw creaks into something that might be the closest thing to a grim smile a 400-year-old rock guardian can manage. Then let us make sure, Alaric Renn, that when he finally does think of you again, it terrifies him. That first night in the Hollow Reach should have killed me. Instead, I sleep inside a hollow the Warden carves from bedrock, shielded from a wind that carries voices in it. and I wake up alive for the first time believing I might actually stay that way. The next 6 days blur into a rhythm I never expected to find in a graveyard the size of a country. I learn to listen the way the Warden taught me, tuning my ear to the pulse beneath the ash. Twice more, I find buried Wardens. And twice more, I offer my blood and my word instead of my fear. The second Warden is smaller, shaped like a hunched old woman built from cracked clay, and she gives me the ability to draw clean water from any cracked riverbed in my bound radius. The third is barely more than a spark trapped in blackened glass, and it teaches ash to burn clean enough to cook over. Word doesn't spread instantly. Nothing in the hollow reach moves fast except the wind. But on the 7th day, I find the first sign that I'm not entirely alone out here anymore, and it very nearly gets me killed before I even get a good look at her. An arrow whistles past my ear so close I feel the wind of it. I hit the ash, roll, and come up with the crude stone blade the second Warden helped me shape, heart hammering. A figure drops down from a collapsed archway 30 feet away, Bayo already knocked with a second arrow, aimed dead center at my chest. "You're not supposed to be alive," she says. "Funny," I say. Everyone keeps telling me that like it's an insult. She's maybe my age, dressed in patched leather and wasteland gray cloth that blends almost perfectly with the ash around her. Her eyes are sharp, suspicious, the eyes of someone who has survived somewhere she was never supposed to survive. "Nobody lasts a week in the Reach," she says. "Not since the last Synod purge. So either you're something new, or you're bait for a trap. And either way, I'd rather put an arrow in you first, and ask questions after." "If I were bait," I say, hands raised slow, "wouldn't the trap already have sprung by now?" She hesitates. Just a fraction of a second, but I see the arrow tip waver. "Who are you?" she demands. "Alaric Renn," I say, and watch her whole body go rigid at the name. "Banished 7 days ago, for a crime I didn't commit. And judging by your face, you've heard of my family before." "Everyone out here has heard of the Renn name," she spits. "Your bloodline is the reason this land is a grave." Fair enough. I'm starting to understand that particular reputation better than I'd like. Her name, I learn once the arrow finally lowers, is Sarah Callow, daughter of exiles, born inside the Hollow Reach's outer ruins to parents who fled the border wars 2 decades ago rather than face debtor's chains back in the kingdoms. She's lived here her whole life, in a scattered community of maybe 40 survivors nobody in the outside world even knows exists. 40 people, I repeat, stunned. Living inside a wasteland everyone believes is empty. Empty of anyone who matters to the Synod, Sarah says bitterly. That's the only reason we're still breathing. As long as they think this land is worthless, they leave it alone. The moment they think otherwise, they burn it, I finish, remembering the Warden's warning. "They burn everything," she says quietly, "and everyone in it." That single sentence rearranges my priorities completely. I didn't come out here planning to build anything. I came out here expecting to die alone in the ash. But 40 innocent people are living on borrowed time in the middle of a graveyard, and I'm apparently the first person in 400 years who might actually be able to change that. "Take me to them," I say. Sarah's community lives inside what used to be the lower foundations of a collapsed watchtower, half buried by centuries of ash storms. Children peek out from behind crumbling stone as I walk in beside Sarah, and every adult face I pass carries the same expression. Not hope. Not yet. Just exhausted disbelief that another Renn is standing on their doorstep. An older man steps forward, leaning on a cane carved from petrified wood. Sarah's father, I learn, named Bram Callow, the closest thing this scattered community has to a leader. "You've got some nerve," Bram says, "wearing that name in this camp." "I didn't choose the name," I say. "I'm trying to choose what I do with it now." Bram studies me for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then his eyes drop to the sigil glowing faintly on the back of my hand, the mark the first Warden left there, and something in his expression shifts from suspicion into something closer to fear. "That mark," he says slowly, "I've only heard of that in old survivor stories." "The Sundering Bearer's mark. You know what it means?" I ask. "I know what it's supposed to mean," Bram says. That the Wardens have chosen someone to rebuild what your ancestors destroyed. I always assumed those stories were just something desperate people tell themselves to sleep at night. Apparently not, I say, holding up my hand so the mark catches the gray light. The murmurs that ripple through the camp aren't celebration. They're careful, guarded hope. The kind people only allow themselves in small, controlled doses after a lifetime of disappointment. I understand that hesitation completely. I've been disappointed by my own blood family more times than I can count. If this is real, Bram says finally, then you understand what it means for us. The Synod tolerates a handful of exiles hiding in ruins. They will not tolerate an empire rising in ground they've spent centuries convincing the world is cursed. Then we don't announce anything, I say. We build quiet, we build strong, and by the time they notice, it's already too late to burn it down. It's a good plan. It lasts exactly 11 days before it falls apart completely. Those 11 days are the best I've had in longer than I can remember. I bind 2 more Wardens, with Sarah's help scouting collapsed ruins for buried pulses, and each pact strengthens the small radius of land around the watchtower camp. Clean water flows from a spring that shouldn't exist. Cracked soil starts sprouting the first stubborn green shoots this ground has seen in 4 centuries. The camp starts calling the growing safe zone, the hollow root, half joke, half genuine reverence. Children who've never seen anything but gray ash stare at a single sprouting weed like it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Honestly, out here, it might be. Sarah and I fall into an easy rhythm scouting together, and somewhere in those 11 days, easy rhythm starts becoming something else. She's sharp, unflinching, the kind of person who's survived on instinct her whole life and trusts it more than she trusts words. I find myself trusting her instincts more than my own, most days. You're different than I expected a Renn to be, she tells me one evening, watching the ash-colored sunset over the growing green patch around the watchtower. Different how? I ask. Less like someone who thinks he's owed something, she says. More like someone who actually wants to earn it. I don't have a clever response to that. I just let the compliment sit there, warmer than anything I've felt since walking through the cinder gate. That warmth doesn't last. On the 12th day, one of the camp's younger scouts comes sprinting back through the ruins so fast he trips twice, screaming one word that turns my blood to ice. Synod. The scout's report comes out in ragged, terrified pieces. A patrol, maybe 30 strong, wearing the ivory and gray colors of the Synod's border enforcement, has made camp 2 miles from the watchtower ruins. Not a routine sweep. A deliberate advance, moving with purpose straight toward the hollow root. They found us, Bram says grimly, gripping his cane so tight his knuckles whiten. They didn't find you, I say slowly, understanding hitting me like a physical blow. They found the green. Ash doesn't grow shoots on its own. Someone spotted the change in the land from outside the border, and they came to see why. I did this. 11 days of careful packs, and I painted a target on the one place these 40 people had left to hide. What do we do? Sarah asks, already reaching for her bow, voice steady, despite the fear plain in her eyes. I think about running, scattering the camp deeper into the wasteland, buying a few more weeks of survival before the Synod inevitably finds them again anyway. I think about hiding, letting the patrol search and find nothing, praying they lose interest. Then I think about my father's face at my sentencing, and the 7 Renns before me who died screaming rather than fight for anything at all. We don't run, I say. We meet them before they reach the camp. On our terms, not theirs. The plan I put together with Bram and Sarah that night is desperate, held together mostly by hope and the 2 newest Wardens I've bound. But desperate has gotten me further in the last 12 days than anything careful ever did back at my father's court. The patrol's leader is a man named Inquisitor Bastian Rourke, and I learn his name only because he introduces himself very formally right before threatening to burn everyone I've come to care about to ash. He's tall, immaculate despite marching 2 miles through wasteland dust, with the calm, unhurried cruelty of a man who has done this exact thing many times before and never once lost sleep over it. 30 armed enforcers stand behind him, in neat, disciplined rows. Unregistered growth inside the hollow reach, Rourke announces. like he's reading from a script he's memorized 100 times. Synod law requires immediate purification of any land showing signs of the old corruption returning. Evacuate or be purified alongside it. I step forward, alone, between the enforcers and the ruins where 40 people are hiding, praying the plan holds. There's no corruption here, I say. Just people trying to survive. Rourke's eyes flick to the sigil glowing on my hand, and something in his composed expression flickers, just briefly, into genuine surprise. A sundering mark, he says slowly. I was told those bloodlines died out centuries ago. Guess someone forgot to double-check, I say. Renn, Rourke says, tasting the name like it explains something. The house that started this curse in the first place. How fitting that one of you would try to finish the job. I'm not finishing anything, I say. I'm undoing it. Rourke's expression hardens completely, all trace of surprise gone. Then you understand why I can't allow that to continue, he says, and raises his hand, signaling his enforcers to advance. This is the part of the plan where everything is supposed to go exactly right. It doesn't. I call the 2 newest Wardens the moment Rourke's hand drops, and the ground beneath the enforcer's front line erupts upward in jagged stone spikes, sending the first row scrambling backward in chaos. It buys seconds, not victory, and Rourke's face twists with fury rather than fear. A pact-bound traitor, he snarls, drawing a blade that hums faintly with something that isn't ordinary steel. Kill him first. The Wardens die with their bearer. 6 enforcers break formation and come straight for me, and I realize with sudden, cold clarity that 4 Wardens bound over 12 days is nowhere near enough to survive a coordinated Synod strike team. This was always going to be close. It's about to become impossible. Sarah's arrow drops the first enforcer before he closes half the distance, but there are 5 more behind him, and I have exactly 1 stone blade and a body that's never actually fought a trained soldier in its entire pampered noble life. I duck the first strike, barely, feel the wind of the blade close enough to nick my ear. The second enforcer is already swinging before I've fully recovered, and this is the moment I understand, with total clarity, that I am about to die, 11 days after I was supposed to die the first time. Then the ground doesn't just shake, it roars. Every enforcer freezes as a crack splits open behind me, wider and deeper than anything the smaller Wardens have ever managed, and something ancient begins rising out of it, shedding 400 years of buried ash like a shed skin. It's enormous. Twice the height of the watchtower ruins, built from black stone, fused with rusted iron chains thicker than my torso, its single glowing eye scanning the battlefield with the slow, deliberate weight of something that has been asleep since before any kingdom currently standing was founded. The first Warden, Rourke breathes, all his composure finally cracking into something close to genuine terror. That's not possible. The first Warden has been dormant since the Sundering itself. The voice that answers isn't mine. I have been waiting 4 centuries, it rumbles, low enough that I feel it in my teeth, for a Renn who did not come here to finish breaking this land. I will not watch you finish that work in his place. I never bound the first Warden. I never even knew it existed until this exact moment. But somehow, impossibly, it answered anyway, drawn by something in me it recognized as different from every Renn before it. The first Warden's arm sweeps sideways, and half of Rourke's remaining line goes flying, like they weigh nothing at all. Rourke himself barely dodges, scrambling backward, his humming blade suddenly looking very small against something that predates the concept of blades entirely. "Fall back!" Rourke shouts, all pretense of composure abandoned. "Fall back to the border, and report this to the Grand Inquisitor immediately." The surviving enforcers don't need to be told twice. They scatter, dragging their wounded, sprinting back the way they came far faster than their disciplined march arrived. Rourke lingers just long enough to point his humming blade at me one last time. "This isn't over, Renn," he says. "You've just made yourself the single most important target the Synod has faced in 400 years. Then he's gone too, vanishing into the ash with the rest of his broken patrol, leaving the camp standing, 40 people alive, and a first Warden the size of a small mountain looming behind me like the world's most terrifying bodyguard." Sarah lowers her bow slowly, staring up at the massive stone figure with an expression somewhere between awe and disbelief. Bram limps forward on his cane, and behind him, every survivor from the Watchtower ruins is staring at me with an expression I've genuinely never seen directed at me before in my entire life. Not fear. Not pity. Something that looks almost exactly like belief. "You said you didn't come here to finish breaking this land," Bram says quietly, echoing the Warden's words. "What did you come here to do instead?" I look around at the camp, at the green shoots pushing up through ash that hadn't grown anything in 400 years. At Sarah, standing beside me instead of behind me. At 40 people who have spent their whole lives hiding in ruins, finally standing up straight for the first time. "I came here to die," I say honestly, "but I think I'd rather build something instead." The first Warden's massive head tilts down toward me, its single, glowing eye studying me with something that might, in a being that old, actually be approval. "Then build, Sundering Bearer," it rumbles. "And this time, when the world comes to tear it down again, it will find more than 7 dead Wrens waiting for it." That night, for the first time since the cinder gate slammed shut behind me, I don't sleep in a hollow carved from bedrock hiding from the wind. I sleep in the open, under a sky I can actually see stars through, in a camp that just survived the first attack the Synod ever threw at it. It doesn't last long, that peace. 3 days later, a Synod messenger hawk drops a sealed letter at the edge of the hollow root, addressed not to Bram, not to Sarah, but specifically to me. I recognize the wax seal the instant I see it, and my stomach drops straight through the ground. It's my father's seal. I break it open with hands that aren't quite steady, and the message inside is short, precise, and colder than anything the Wasteland has thrown at me yet. Word has reached Esterlin of a sundering mark, and a first Warden awakened in the Hollow Reach. My father knows I'm alive, and beneath his signature, in handwriting I'd recognize anywhere, is a second line that makes the whole camp go silent when I read it out loud. Ivor has convinced the Ivory Synod to declare the Hollow Reach a crusade target. Full mobilization begins within the month. "Whatever you have built out there, Alaric, you have 30 days to prepare to defend it, or 30 days to run." I look up from the letter at Sarah, at Bram, at 40 survivors who trusted me enough to stand beside me against 30 enforcers 3 days ago, and I understand exactly what comes next isn't going to be a skirmish. It's going to be a war, and I have 30 days to turn a wasteland grave into something strong enough to survive it. I look up from the letter at Sarah, at Bram, at 40 survivors who trusted me enough to stand beside me against 30 enforcers 3 days ago. And the silence that follows lasts exactly as long as it takes for someone in the back of the crowd to start crying. Not loud, just a woman near the collapsed archway, hand pressed over her mouth, and the sound of it breaks whatever spell was holding the camp still. Voices rise all at once, fast and sharp and terrified, and I watch 30 days collapse into 30 seconds of pure panic right in front of me. "A crusade!" someone shouts. A full crusade, not a patrol. "We should have run the second the green started showing," says another voice, older, bitter. "I told you the shoots would give us away." Bram raises his cane and slams it against the stone at his feet, and the crack of it cuts through the noise, just enough for people to hear him. "Quiet," he says, and it isn't loud. But 40 years of surviving in this wasteland has taught this camp to listen when Bram Callow uses that particular tone. The crowd settles into something that isn't calm, just quieter panic, and every eye in the ruins turns to me. I fold the letter once, twice, feel my father's seal crack further under my thumb, and I understand that whatever I say in the next 10 seconds decides whether this camp survives the month or scatters into the ash and dies alone in smaller pieces. "I'm not going to pretend this isn't as bad as it sounds," I say. "A full crusade means the Grand Inquisitor isn't sending 30 men next time. It means hundreds. Maybe more. And they're not coming to search anymore. They're coming to burn." "Then we run," a man near the front says. He's younger than Bram, hard-eyed, a long scar across his jaw that I've noticed before but never asked about. "We've survived out here by staying invisible. The second you started binding Wardens, you made us visible. Maybe the answer is we go back to being nobody." A few heads nod at that. More than a few. What's your name? I ask him. Corin, he says, like he's daring me to make something of it. Corin's right about one thing, I say, and I watch surprise flicker across his face at that, like he expected me to fight him instead of agree. I made you visible. That's on me. But running doesn't make you invisible again. Not now. The Synod already knows the Hollow Reach isn't empty. Scattering into smaller groups just means smaller groups die easier when they come looking. So your plan is what? Corin says. Stand here and wait for hundreds of Synod soldiers to arrive and hope 4 Wardens and a stone blade is enough? My plan is 30 days, I say. 30 days to make this ground something they can't just walk through. 30 days to bind every Warden we can find, fortify everything we can build, and turn this camp into something that costs them more to take than they're willing to pay. And if 30 days isn't enough, then at least we go down building something, I say, instead of dying quietly in some ravine after running for a week with nowhere left to hide. Nobody cheers. This isn't the kind of speech that gets cheered, but I watch the panic in the crowd shift into something slower, more considering, and Bram's cane taps once against the stone, in what I'm starting to recognize as his version of approval. Corin doesn't look convinced. He crosses his arms and studies me the way Sarah did the first day I met her, like he's deciding whether I'm worth the risk of trusting. Half the camp's got children in it, he says. I'm not gambling their lives on a Renn's 30-day promise. Then don't gamble anything, I say. Watch. If in 10 days you don't see this camp getting stronger, take whoever wants to go and run. I won't stop you. I won't blame you either. That, apparently, is the offer that actually lands. Corin's jaw works for a second, and then he gives one short, unconvinced nod and steps back into the crowd without another word. It's not trust. It's a countdown. But a countdown I can work with is better than a camp that scatters tonight. Sarah catches my eye across the ruins, and there's something in her expression that isn't quite a smile, but it's close enough to steady the hammering in my chest. 10 days to convince a man who spent his whole life running not to run, she says quietly, once the crowd starts breaking into smaller, murmuring clusters. You set yourself an ambitious deadline. I set myself a 30-day deadline first, I say. 10 days for Corin was just generous. That's not generous, she says. That's terrifying. You've been out here 12 days, and you're already negotiating with people's lives like you know what you're doing. I don't, I admit. I'm making it up as I go and hoping nobody notices. Everybody notices, she says, but there's warmth under it now, and for just a second the weight in my chest eases enough that I remember how to breathe properly. Bram limps over, leaning heavier on his cane than he did an hour ago, exhaustion pulling at the lines of his face. 10 days or 30, he says. The math doesn't change. We need more Wardens bound, more ground hardened, and we need it faster than anything we've managed so far. 4 Wardens got us through 30 enforcers. It won't get us through a crusade. Then we stop scouting one pulse at a time, I say. We map everything, every dormant Warden signature within reach, tonight, so we know exactly what we're working with before we start burning through the days we don't have. Bram's eyes narrow, calculating. That's not a small task. Neither is surviving a crusade, I say. He almost smiles at that. Almost. We spend what's left of that first evening spread across the broken floor of the watchtower's lower foundation, a cracked slab of stone serving as the closest thing we have to a map table. Bram sketches the terrain from memory. Decades of scavenging every ravine and collapsed ruin within walking distance, carved into his mind long before I ever fell through the cinder gate. Sarah fills in the gaps, marking places where she's felt the ground pulse strange under her boots, places she always avoided because avoiding strange things kept her alive out here longer than curiosity ever would. Here, she says, tapping a spot northeast of the camp, a jagged formation Bram's marked as the Split Ridge. The ground hums there. I never got close enough to find out why. Didn't seem worth dying over. Here too, Bram adds, indicating a collapsed structure closer to camp, half buried under an ash dune that's shifted twice in his memory, without ever fully burying it. Old foundry ruins, from before the Sundering, if the shape of it means anything. Never felt a pulse there myself, but it's the kind of place old power likes to hide. By the time the gray sky outside darkens into something closer to black, we've marked 6 locations. 6 possible wardens, scattered across 5 miles of cursed ground, and 30 days to find them all, before an army arrives to make sure I never get the chance. We can't scout 6 sites and fortify the camp at the same time, Sarah says, staring at the map like it might rearrange itself into an easier answer if she looks hard enough. Not with the people we have. Then we prioritize, I say. The Split Ridge and the Foundry ruins first. Closest to camp, fastest to reach, fastest to defend if we bind something there. And if the closest ones are the weakest wardens? Bram asks. Then we're no worse off than we are right now, I say. Strong or weak, every warden bound is ground we didn't have this morning. We start at first light. The Foundry ruins first, because it's closer, and because something about the way Bram describes the shape of the place, iron-framed and squat and deliberate, keeps snagging at the edge of my thoughts all through the walk there. Ash crunches underfoot in that same low, uneven rhythm I've gotten used to over 12 days. But Sarah walks it like she was born, knowing exactly where the ground wants to betray you, and I've learned to walk exactly where she walks. The ruins themselves are barely recognizable as anything that used to matter. Collapsed walls, iron beams twisted and half swallowed by ash drifts, the skeleton of something that might have been enormous once. But the moment I step past the threshold of what used to be a doorway, the sigil on the back of my hand flares hot enough that I actually hiss and pull my sleeve down over it out of pure reflex. That's new, Sarah says, watching my face. That's a lot, I agree, through my teeth. The pulse here isn't subtle like the others were. It's a heartbeat, fast and heavy, and when I press my palm flat against the ash-covered stone floor, the whole foundry seems to shudder in response, like something enormous just rolled over in its sleep and is starting to wake up annoyed about it. Careful, Bram warns, hanging back near the broken doorway, with his cane raised half like a weapon. Not every warden wakes up friendly. The first warden liked you. That's not a guarantee the rest will. He's right to be cautious. I know he's right. But 12 days of surviving on instinct and desperation have taught me that hesitation out here gets people killed faster than boldness does. So I keep my palm pressed to the stone and I wait. The response, when it comes, isn't a voice. It's heat, sudden and enormous, radiating up from the ground like something buried down there just remembered what fire feels like. The ash around my boots begins to glow, faint orange threading through gray, and a shape rises out of the collapsed foundry floor that looks less like a person and more like a forge itself given a body. Black iron limbs wrapped in slow-cooling metal, a chest that glows like coals refusing to die completely. Blood-marked, it says, and its voice sounds exactly like metal striking metal, sharp and ringing. First in 400 years to walk into my forge and not flee screaming within the hour. I'm developing a reputation, I say, only half joking, because my heart is slamming hard enough against my ribs that speaking normally takes actual effort. You should, it rumbles. The Renn line broke every promise made to this land. I was bound to arm the Warden line against exactly that betrayal, and instead, I watched my forge go cold for 4 centuries while the world forgot I existed. I'm trying to fix what my family broke, I say. I know that doesn't erase what happened. I'm not asking you to forgive it. I'm asking if you'll help me stop it from happening again. The Forge Warden's molten eyes study me for a long, uncomfortable stretch of silence, heat rolling off its chest in slow waves that make the ash around us shimmer. The others bound to you, it finally says. Stone, clay, spark. Small things, suited to small survival. I am not a small thing. I forge what wins wars, blood-marked, weapons, armor, walls that do not fall to ordinary siege. If I bind to you, I am not offering you comfort. I am offering you the ability to actually fight what is coming. That's exactly what I need, I say. Then prove it, it says. Not with words. Words are cheap, and every Renn before you spent them freely while this land burned. Prove it with what you're willing to give. I don't fully understand what it's asking until it extends one massive iron hand toward me, palm glowing white-hot, clearly expecting me to place my hand against heat that would cook flesh off bone in seconds. Sarah makes a sharp sound behind me, already stepping forward, already reaching for my arm to stop me. Alaric, don't, she says. That's not a pact, that's a death sentence. It's a test, the Forge Warden says, and there's something almost approving in its ringing voice, watching Sarah's instinct to protect me. The mark you bear does not simply grant power, girl. It reads intention. If his intention toward this land is true, the Forge will know it, and the heat will not harm him. If it is false, or hollow, or self-serving the way every Renn before him has been, he will burn exactly as any liar deserves to. I look at my own hand, at the sigil pulsing faint gold against my skin, and I think about my father's face at the sentencing, and Ivor's calm, patient smile, and 40 people who stood behind me against 30 enforcers, because some ancient piece of stone decided I was worth trusting first. I put my hand against the Forge Warden's palm. The heat doesn't burn. It floods through me exactly like the first Warden's pain did, except this time it isn't agony, it's something closer to certainty, white and clean and absolute, burning away every doubt I've been quietly carrying since the moment I stepped through the cinder gate. When it fades, my hand is unmarked, whole, and the sigil on the back of it now glows with a thin line of orange, threading through the gold. Then it is done, the Forge Warden says, iron limbs settling, the frantic heat radiating from its chest, banking down into something steadier, more controlled. Bring me ore, bring me broken iron, bring me anything this dead land still has buried in it, and I will give this camp weapons worthy of the fight ahead. Sarah lets out a breath she's clearly been holding since the moment I reached for that glowing hand, and when I look at her, the fear on her face has already started shifting into something closer to relief, and underneath that, something warmer I don't quite let myself name yet. You have got to stop doing things that could kill you, she says. In my defense, I say, it worked. That's not the reassurance you think it is. The walk back to camp with the Forge Warden trailing behind us, a slow, deliberate presence that makes the ash under its feet glow faintly with every step, draws every eye the moment we're in sight of the ruins. Bram's already talking logistics before we've fully crossed the threshold, sketching out where a proper forge could be built, what materials the scattered ruins might still hold, how fast real weapons could change everything about the camp's odds in a crusade. Corin watches from the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, expression unreadable. It isn't trust yet, but it's fewer than 10 days now, and something about the look on his face tells me the countdown just got a little more forgiving. 2 more days pass in a blur of hauling scrap iron and scorched stone to the ruined foundry floor, watching the Forge Warden turn broken metal into blades, and half-finished armor with an ease that makes my crude stone knife look like a child's toy in comparison. The camp's mood shifts with every finished weapon, fear slowly making room for something like purpose, and even Corin starts showing up to haul materials without anyone asking him to. It's on the 3rd night after binding the Forge Warden that everything changes again. I'm standing watch near the outer edge of the ruins, close enough to the perimeter that the growing green of the hollow root fades back into gray, endless ash under a sky with no stars visible tonight, when Sarah's low whistle cuts through the dark, sharp and urgent. I'm moving before I've even fully processed the sound, stone blade in hand, heart already hammering. There's a figure stumbling out of the ash toward the camp, alone, moving with the uneven, desperate gait of someone who's been walking far longer than their body can handle. Sarah's already got an arrow nocked, aimed dead center at the shape, and I raise a hand to hold her fire, some instinct telling me this isn't an attack. The figure collapses 20 feet from the perimeter, and by the time we reach them, it's clear why. He's wearing the tattered remains of Synod border enforcement colors, ivory and gray gone gray with ash, and dark with something that might be old bloodstains, and his hands are raised the second he sees us coming, shaking too hard to hold steady. Don't, he says, voice cracked and hoarse. I'm not here to fight. I'm here because I don't have anywhere else left to go. Sarah keeps the arrow trained on him anyway, and I don't blame her. You're Synod, she says. Give me one reason not to put an arrow through you right now. Because I deserted 3 days ago, he says, after I watched my commander order the execution of an entire scouting party that refused to torture information out of an exile family for sport. I've been walking ever since, hoping the stories about a Renn hiding out here weren't just stories. What's your name? I ask. Talon, he says. Talon. Voss. Border Enforcement, 3rd Company, under direct command of Inquisitor Bastian Rourke. The name lands like a physical weight. Sarah's arrow doesn't waver, but her eyes flick to me, sharp with the same recognition I feel settling cold in my chest. You served under Rourke, I say slowly. The same Rourke who marched 30 enforcers here 9 days ago and got sent home in pieces. I heard about that, Talon says, and something that might almost be a bitter, exhausted smile crosses his face. First time I ever heard of Rourke retreating from anything. It's the only reason morale in the 3rd Company held together as long as it did after. Everyone thought he was untouchable. Why should I trust anything you tell me? I ask. You're Synod. You could be here to finish what Rourke's patrol started. I could be, Talon admits. But if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have walked in alone, unarmed, announcing myself before I even reached the perimeter. I'm here because I've got nowhere else to go, and because I know things about what's coming that you're going to want to hear before it's too late to prepare for it. Bram arrives, cane thumping against packed ash, Corin and a handful of others trailing behind him, drawn by the commotion. The old man studies Talon for a long, considering moment, the same careful weighing look he gave me the day I first walked into this camp, wearing a name everyone here had reason to hate. Let him talk, Bram says finally. If he's lying, Sarah's arrow isn't going anywhere. If he's telling the truth, we'd be fools to turn away information this camp desperately needs. Sarah lowers the bow, though her hand doesn't leave the string, and Talon's shoulders sag with something like relief mixed into the exhaustion. The crusade isn't 30 days out anymore, he says. Not really. The main force is still mobilizing. That part's true. But the Grand Inquisitors already dispatched a vanguard, 200 strong, moving ahead of the main crusade army to scout, weaken defenses, and soften the ground before the real force arrives. I heard the orders myself before I left. 200, Sarah repeats, voice flat with the effort of staying calm. We barely survived 30. That's not even the part you need to worry about most, Talon says, and something in his tone makes my stomach twist in anticipation of whatever comes next. I heard something else, back at the border camp, before I ran. Something about who petitioned to lead the full crusade personally, once the vanguard finishes clearing the way. Who? I ask, though some cold, sinking part of me already suspects the answer before he says it. Talon's eyes meet mine, and there's something almost apologetic in them, the look of a man who knows exactly how much damage the next sentence is about to do. Ivor Renn, he says, your brother petitioned the Grand Inquisitor directly, in person, to command the crusade himself. Word at the border camp is the Grand Inquisitor granted the request 3 days ago. The camp around me goes utterly silent, the same silence that followed my father's letter, the exact weight of it settling back over the ruins like it never actually left. Somewhere behind me, I hear Sarah's sharp intake of breath, and Bram's cane goes still against the ash. 30 days was already a countdown to survive an army. Now it's a countdown to face my own brother across a battlefield, and something tells me Ivor isn't marching out here to negotiate. If this chapter hit, smash that like before the next part drops.